Hello, my class. Today we are going to learn how to round numbers. Okay, so the essential question is, how can you round numbers? And I think the best way to first learn about this is know, what do they mean by round numbers? What does that mean? When we're talking about rounding, rounding means making a number simpler, but keeping its value close to what it was. And here's what we mean by that. If I have a number like 983,562,234. Oh my goodness, that's a big number and it's a lot of words. And it would be hard to add this number, it would be hard to multiply by this number, and it's just difficult to say as well. 983,562,234. Whew. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to round this number up or down. I want to find a number that is close to it, but is simpler and easier to say. Okay, so what I can figure out, and I'll show you how to figure this out, is that this number is close to 980 million. So instead of having to say this whole big number or try to add this whole big number or try to multiply this whole big number, I can say this number, it's about 980 million. It's close to 980 million. And that will be an easier number to use. 980 million is really close to the number I have up top here. All right. So that's what we're going to be learning today. How did I decide to keep the 98 but simplify the rest? How did I decide to keep it at 980 instead of going up to 990 or going down to 970? So that's what we'll talk about today. And we use rounding to make things easier. I do want to say the result is less exact, okay? But it's easier to use. All right. So let's look at our question. Remember, when we read a math question, a good thing to do is to circle the numbers and underline the question. All right? So it says here, during May 2008, the Mount Rushmore National Monument in South Dakota welcomed 138,202 visitors. Sorry, let me get a better circle. A website reported that about 100,000 people, so I'm going to circle that because it's words, but it's numbers. About 100,000 people visited the park during that month. Was the estimate reasonable? Let's underline that question. Was the estimate reasonable? Okay. So here's the information I know. Let's go back over it. The monument welcomed 138,202 people. And the website said that it was about 100,000. And what we want to know is, was the estimate reasonable? Well, what's an estimate? An estimate tells you about how many or about how much. Okay? So let me underline those phrases. When I'm making an estimate, it tells me about how many or about how much. Okay? It's almost there. It's close to the original number, but it's just about there. All right? So when it's an estimate, it is close to an exact amount. And you can round a number to find an estimate. So that's what we need to do. We need to take our original number, we need to round it to find an estimate and see if it matches up with the estimate they put on this website. Okay? So one way to round is to use a number line. So it says here to round a number to the nearest 100,000, because remember they said it's about 100,000. So we're rounding it to the nearest 100,000. Find the 100,000 it is between. Okay? So if I were to list off all of the 100,000s, okay, I would have 100,000. I could have 200,000. I could have 300,000, 400,000, 500,000. I could have 600,000. It goes all the way up to 900,000. These are the 100,000s that it could be between. So what I want to ask myself is, if I'm counting up to this number, 138,202, what is it going to be between? Will it be between 100,000 and 200,000? 200,000 and 300,000? 300,000 and 400,000? And so on. Well, if we look at our number line here, it looks like it's between 100,000 and 200,000. So if I was counting up from 100,000, I would reach this number before I got to 200,000. Okay? So that's where I put it on my number line, between 100,000 and 200,000. So let's write that over here. 100,000 and 200,000. Okay. So now I'm going to put it on my number line. Okay. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 before it gets to 150,000. So I think it's counting by 10,000s. 110,000, 120,000, 130,000. So it would come after 130,000, but before 140,000. Okay. And so now I just have to decide, which side is it closer to? Here's my middle. Okay. Here's my middle line. Is it closer? Sorry, I'm trying to get the drawing tool. Is it closer to this side, or is it closer to this side? And because my middle mark is here and it's on this side, that means it's closer to 100,000 than it is to 200,000. So when I'm rounding, I'm going to say it's about 100,000 because it's closer to this side than it is to 200,000. So let's write that out. 138,202 is closer to 100,000 than 200,000. Okay. So when it said earlier that on the website they said it's about 100,000, that is a reasonable estimate. Reasonable means it makes sense. So their estimate that 138,202 is about 100,000 is a reasonable estimate. Okay? All right. So now I want to show you another way to round. Okay? And here's the other way to round. It says to use place value, and we've been talking about place value, okay? Even though I don't have my place value chart in front of me, something that I hope we've learned by now is that this is the ones place, tens place, hundreds place, thousands place. Okay, so I want you to be practicing that. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, okay? So let's read how to use place value. And it has another question, so I'm going to circle my numbers and underline the question. Okay. So Mount Rushmore is located 5,275 feet above sea level. About how high is Mount Rushmore above sea level to the nearest 1,000 feet? I want to point out some important words here, okay? It says about how high. Whenever it says about, it wants you to find an estimate. It wants you to round. It wants you to get close to it, but not the exact number, okay? So that's an important word. About how high is Mount Rushmore? They don't want to know the exact number. They want to know, what's it close to, okay? And then it says, to the nearest 1,000 feet. To the nearest 1,000 feet. Okay, so when we round, they will ask you to round to the nearest 10, round to the nearest 100, round to the nearest 100,000. That's giving you the starting place for where we're going to round, okay? Here, it's the nearest 1,000 feet, which means we are looking at the thousands place because we're rounding to the nearest 1,000, okay? So to round a number to the nearest 1,000, first we find the thousands that it's between, okay? Just like I listed off before with the 100,000s, I can do the same thing with the thousands. What are the list of thousands it can be between? It could be between 1,000 and 2,000, or 3,000, 4,000, all the way up through 9. And what we're deciding is, if I was counting, what two numbers would it be between if I was counting up? So my number is 5,725. So starting with 5,000, okay, starting with 5,000, I would start at 5,000 and count up, and I would hit that number before I got to 6,000, okay? So my number is between 5,000 and 6,000. And I figured that out because I have a 5 in the thousands place, okay? Because remember, we're looking for the nearest 1,000. Then it says, look at the digit in the place value position to the right, okay? So here I'm looking in the thousands place, and then I'm going to look next door, okay? I'm going to look next door at what's sitting next to it, and I'm going to decide if this number makes it closer to 6,000 or closer to 5,000, okay? So 7 is kind of high. I want you to picture that number line. In the middle of the number line, okay, is 5. Okay, so 5 a number line, and it starts at 1, okay? And I'm going all the way to digit 9. Then in the middle here, I'm going to have 5. Okay? And so what I'm picturing is, if I have 7, is that closer to my lower number, or is it closer to my higher number? Okay? Here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here I have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 7 is over here, and it's closer to the higher number. It's closer to the 6,000. Okay, so looking at that 7 lets me know that it's higher and it's closer to 6,000. So Mount Rushmore is about 6,000 feet above sea level. Okay, I am going to show you these notes that are going to help make this process easier in your brain. Okay, easy step-by-step how to do this. And I'll include these notes in your assignment. These aren't ones to be written on. These are ones to just look at to help you, okay? And we're going to follow, look, it has 5 steps for us to follow and make it really easy. Okay? So it is going to walk us through the steps. So let's come up with a number. I'm going to use the number, let's see, 3,000. Sorry, I thought I was drawing. 3,000 and 3,122. Okay, here's my example. And I'm going to use these steps. Step 1. Oh, first of all, we do have to ask the question because the question is important. Let's see. About how much is 3,122 when rounded to the nearest thousand? Okay. Oh, question mark. Okay. So, about how much is 3,022 when rounded to the nearest thousand? Remember, let's circle our number. It's 3,122. And the question is when it's rounded to the nearest thousand. Okay. So, number 1, underline the digit in the rounding place. This is the rounding place. When it says to the nearest whatever it is, that's the rounding place. My rounding place right here is the thousands place. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. Let me underline in the thousands place. Next it says, step number 2, circle the digit to the right. So this is my rounding place, so I'm circling the digit to the right, okay? And then I'm going to look at the one I circled to follow the rounding rules. 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, add 1 more, okay? This is the number I'm changing. This is the number I'm looking at, okay? So I'm looking at number 1. Is it 4 or less, let it rest? Or is it 5 or more, add 1 more, okay? This is 4 or less. 1 is less than 4. So I'm going to let it rest. That means that my 3 stays the same. Because the 1 is less than 4, 3 is going to stay the same. Okay? Step number 4. Change all the digits to the right of the rounding place to 0. So I'm going to change all of these digits over here into 0. I still have my comma. This 1 gets turned into a 0. This 2 gets turned into a 0. This 2 gets turned into a 0. Okay? And then number 5 says all the digits to the left remain the same. That means if there were more numbers over here, they would stay the same. And I'll show you an example of that next. Okay? So now this is my estimate. This is what I rounded it to. Okay? 3,122 is about 3,000. Okay, let's do another example. I'll have to write another question. About how much is, let's see, 54,000. Let's do a bigger number. 954,000. 567. When rounded to the nearest 10,000. Okay. So about how much is 954,000? Let me circle my number. It's 567. when rounded to the nearest 10,000. Okay. Rounded to the nearest 10,000. Okay, so first, if I had a piece of paper, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write out that number again. 954,567. Okay. And then I'm going to follow my rules. Step 1, underline the digit in the rounding place. I'm going to look to my question. It says the nearest 10,000. 10,000. That means that my rounding place is in the 10,000s place. So let's count it out. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s. Here is my rounding place. Okay? So you need to know place value to know where those places are. Number 2, circle the next digit to the right. Okay? So here's my rounding place. So I'm going to circle. That's a line. I'm going to circle right next to it. Okay? I'll circle the 4. This is the number I'll change. This is the number I'm looking at. Okay? Follow the rounding rules. 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, add 1 more. Okay? Actually, class, I want to change my number because I want to show you guys something. Okay? I want to show you something else. So let's change this to 955,000 because I want to show you rounding up. I'm sorry to change the number right in the middle, but this will help us know what to do better. Okay, here we go. I'm going to take a look at this. So I changed it to 955,567. I underlined the 10,000s place, and now I'm circling its neighbor, the one to the right. Now, I'm going to follow the rounding rules, okay? 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, add 1 more. So because the number I'm looking at is a 5, it's 5 or more, add 1 more, which means because this is a 5, I'll change my rounding place and I'll round up, okay? I'll round it up to a 6. So I turn that 5 into a 6, okay? Step number 4, change all digits to the right of the rounding place to 0. So this 5 gets turned into a 0, the comma. This 5 gets turned into a 0. This 6 turns into a 0. This 7 turns into a 0. Step number 5, all digits to the left remain the same. So all the digits over on this side on the left stay the same. The 9 comes down and turns into a 9. Okay? So when I round 955,567 to the nearest 10,000, it turns into 960,000. So another way to say that is 955,567 is about 960,000. Okay? And that's the process. There's another example down here if you want to take a look at it. But this is how you're going to round. Let's take a look at a couple examples. Okay. It says round to the place value of the underlined digit. Okay. So they already underlined the digit for you, and I'm rounding to that place. Okay. So here they have the 4 underlined. So I'm going to circle its next door neighbor. Oh, that's a square. So right next door, it has a 5. And remember, this is what I look at to decide, and the number that's underlined is what changes, okay? So this next door neighbor is a 5. 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, raise the score is what I like to say, but let me see what it says on our notes. 5 or more, add 1 more. So I'm not changing the circled number, I'm changing the underlined number, okay? So this 4, I need to add 1 more. So I'm going to change the 4 into a 5, okay? All the numbers on the right turn into 0, so the 5 turns into a 0, the 6 turns into a 0, into a 0, and all the numbers on the left stay the same. The 3 comes down, the 9 comes down. And I did it. Let me run through one more and try to do it quicker. Okay? All right. In this one, they've underlined the 4. So I'm going to look at its next door neighbor. I'll circle it. Okay, it's a 1. 4 or more, 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, add 1 more. So remember, I'm changing the underlined number. So 1 is less than 4, so I let it rest. This 4 is going to rest, and it remains a 4, okay? The 1 turns into a 0, put the comma. The 2 turns into a 0. The 6 turns into a 0. The 7 turns into a 0. And all the numbers to the left, the 6 stays the same. So 641,267 is about 640,000. Okay. You are going to do 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 on your own. I would like you to try this word problem. I will read it aloud to you right now. This number, I'm going to circle it, is missing a digit. Remember, a digit is 0 through 9. The number rounded to the nearest thousand, that's important, I'm going to underline it. The number rounded to the nearest thousand is 3,000. List all of the possibilities for the missing digit and explain your answer. Okay? So this number is missing a digit. We got to decide what's going to go in that square. And the number rounded to the nearest thousand is 3,000. So we got to ask ourselves, well, let's put our directions. List all of the possibilities for the missing digit and explain your answer. Okay? So we got to ask ourselves, what next door neighbor would add 1 more to get 3? What next door neighbor would go here that would make the 2 add 1 more to get 3? And then just explain how you figured it out. Okay, you'll do 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 for homework. Have a great day. Bye.